I don't see a lot of backyard wrestling currently. At least nowhere near what it was when we were kids. And when we were kids, there's no YouTube, there's no social media. But it seemed like backyard wrestling had a bigger presence than it is now.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like it's, a relic from a bygone era. Kids now, they're just smartphones and social media. And nobody really plays outside anymore, let alone play fight with their friends on the weekend. Xavier Lascano. Now, you and me go way back. We've known each other probably 25 years.
Easy.
If not a little bit longer. And what I want to know starting off the bat is, what was your first exposure to backyard wrestling? How did you learn what backyard wrestling was?
You know what? I did it before I knew the name, if I recall correctly. I remember back when I was a kid in Arkansas, before moving out to the Bay Area, my friends and we would get together and have these wrestling matches. And eventually, my friend Travis, it was him in his backyard and some of the neighboring kids. And a little later, my cousin Rodney introduced me to his friend Jason, who had a big trampoline. And I want to say we called it the Urban Wrestling League or something like that, and he had replica belts. They didn't film it, but we had our own sort of organized setup, who was who, good guy, bad guy. We didn't know face heel terms back then. And then moving out here, around that time, I became aware that backyard wrestling was a thing because they're advertising for VHS tapes. This is similar to what we were doing, playing around in Arkansas. And then when I moved out here and met you, that's when I really became immersed in what backyard wrestling truly was.
Yeah, and I remember when I brought you into PWL, you very much had a businessman mentality. You were out there, you were papering the streets, you were recruiting people left and right. Mm-hmm. We drew up totally illegal contracts because we had no idea what we were doing.
That's right. I remember when I met you. We were it was the Adams Library, the middle school, and I remember you had your contract right there. And you had printouts from the PWL website. And I was so impressed. You had pictures from the Slam Cam. And my eyes just got wide. I was like, this is really something special here. And you were cool. You know what I mean? It was just the fact that you wanted to do this in your own home. And you had actually made the steps to doing it. I thought that was so dope. I had asked you for a tape specifically so that I could show other people to recruit people. Because that was the sort of mind I was on how to get people. It was just nuts, right? It was nuts, just calling people ahead of time to make sure they were going to make the show and all that, the nuts and bolts. Calling me producer, I guess. I don't know.
And so, famously, I backyard wrestled for 7 years. You started in Arkansas before you came out here to the Bay Area. Mm-hmm. We both had pretty long careers with backyard wrestling. And even though we both wrestled for multiple different federations. Mm-hmm. Kind of the two main eras that always stick out when we look at our history is you have the PWL era and you have the CCW era. Mm-hmm. And you favor one over the other, and I favor the other one. So can you talk to me about PWL and what your experiences were there, and just how you look back at your time in PWL?
You know what? I look back at my time in PWL with a high level of affection and nostalgia. Like, there's so many stories, and there's so much about the experience. It's honestly hard to pick. Mm-hmm. I know for CCW, for you, it was like, it was the biggest wrestling success, right? Like, in terms of having a draw, people coming to go watch us, and people being excited. And I say us because I was there at the very beginning of CCW, and then came during its like closing years.
So yeah, my whole thing was that, like, I prefer CCW to PWL, even though, PWL is kind of like where it started. I started that. I ran that. That was my backyard. The product never quite lived up to my expectations. In my head, I had all these grandiose visions that we were never able to reach. Whereas with CCW, we actually were able to exceed my expectations. And CCW became bigger and more successful than anything I could have thought of. So I tend to favor the CCW era more just because of that. Because I'm like, wow, we pulled this off. PWL to me is always like what could have been, whereas CCW was like, wow, look what we did.
What it actually was. And I look at it like, CCW is awesome. The reason why PWL is so special for me personally, it's essentially, my first time, marketing for anything. Me being able to go up and speak to complete strangers about backyard wrestling, or trying to recruit complete strangers to come to this backyard wrestling show and wrestle for us. And picking out talent and then figuring out like what works with that, what doesn't work with that. Like, has informed what I have done years later for a bunch of productions, for every production that you and I have ever worked on. Even when we were doing pickup gigs, this ILP videos, I'm handing out various cards and talking to people, complete strangers, about like what it is that we do, being able to describe the services that we provide, we actually had a few clients that brought in because of that. And like, but that experience of like, no, let me actually network and connect. That drive that comes from my previous drive with PWL, also when it comes to getting new talent. Like, a lot of the talent that we had coming in, like somebody like B-Money was somebody that I recruited when we were freshmen. I remember talking him into, him and Carlos into coming. And then like, thanks to convincing him and Carlos to come, B-Money was able to bring even more people. And like, it gave me a lesson in marketing. It gave me a lesson in recruitment. Things like, this was the first show I ever tried to write for, was PWL. And learning how to cast and how to write for people based on like their strengths, their weaknesses. Also learning that maybe just because you book a storyline or a part for someone, if they're not able to show up, or if they have to like, bounce out for whatever reason, cut it. You know what I mean? Like, I learned early on, like with, I'm not going to say any names, the Executioner, but with the Executioner, he came once, and like, I was really excited. He kept saying he was going to come back, and I kept telling him, hey man, this is what I'm thinking about doing for your character. What do you want to do? And then he never came back. And I think I wrote for him for like maybe a month straight before I realized that he just wasn't going to come back to the show. So, which was fine. It's a lesson I needed to learn, which is, you give the best parts or the bigger parts to people who are never consistent. Yeah. That bringing in people to be clients in our own business, bringing in guests for our podcasts, all that started in PWL, giving me the confidence that a young person would need, and the time to learn and fail. That's invaluable. That's something that like, yeah, you can do in your 20s. But it's more powerful to, like, the younger you start, the more ahead you're going to be. The less of a mountain you're going to have to climb. Now, that was inward, from the writing, the acting. This was the first acting gig I ever had, was PWL. You know what I mean? And I really got a chance to, like, start kind of getting those basic skills, getting that basic camera awareness. You know what I mean? Like, I wish, like, there are plenty of schools that would want an arts and a performative program that would be as successful as PWL was, because you have 20 to 30 young people who are voluntarily showing up for a constructive activity that is engaging with writing, with acting, with video production, and athleticism. Like, as somebody that works in education, that's huge. And then, like, on the broader side of it, we had kids from all walks of life coming in. We had kids who were, special ed kids. We had kids who were in the street and they were, doing illegal activity. We had kids that were on the straight and narrow. We had kids coming, I think, all the way from like Oakland to come wrestle for. And like, the beautiful thing about all that is that everybody put down if they were doing something that was risky or illegal or whatever that could have gotten them into serious trouble, they're willing to put that down for an entire day out of their weekend to go and do this incredibly constructive thing. I would like to think that the organizational level of it, that the structure of it might have actually been the foundation for a lot of people to springboard off and do really good things. And yeah, school's a huge part of that, but research shows that you gain so much from extracurricular activities for the young. Like at one point during the CCW era, for Poe, you and Poe would go through the booking, the three of you, Poe and Anthony, and learning how to sort of like move the pieces on the board the right way. That all starts from that time. You know what I mean? Like having those skills sharpened and improved as the sort of having the base going forward before you build on top. The PWL is like that foundation.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Like with CCW, a lot of the choices we made as far as like who we pushed, who we didn't, who we put the belt on, who we didn't, that all came from getting burned in PWL and trying stuff and it not working. And we put the belt on somebody and then they don't come back. And now we got to figure out what we're going to do with this belt and just constantly booking ourselves into corners. And it's like, when I look at the two products, as far as CCW goes, like CCW was definitely the much more mature of the two. It was definitely the much more serious of the two. I think the quality of the wrestling matches was much better. And so as a product on its own in a vacuum, that tends to be what I showcase more, but just because of that. But when you look at PWL, yeah, it was silly. Yeah, it was goofy. Yeah, it was campy. But at the same time, you had people coming who had no desire to go pro, no desire to go to wrestling school. They were just coming because it was fun.
Yeah.
And so that made PWL this melting pot that you don't really see anywhere else. Because we had people from all walks of life, all different colors, and we all got along.
And I look at PWL and I go, how many lives do you think, PWL made a positive impact on just by having, a very productive and fun place for kids to go? I know that like safe spaces gets thrown around a lot in ways that make people uncomfortable, but essentially there was a safe space for people. Everybody was able to get along, learn how to get along if they didn't know how to, and walk away with something that they were able to carry with them for the rest of their lives.
I've said it multiple times, all the awesome things in my life are because of backyard wrestling, and it's all started with PWL. And while I may prefer CCW and I may think that's the peak of everything we were able to achieve, CCW wouldn't exist without PWL. So I have to look back fondly on PWL because that's where I met everybody. And that's what laid the foundation for everything that came after it, Do the matches hold up 20 years later?
Not all of them.
Yeah, no, not really. Some of them do, but not a lot of them. Do the storylines hold up? Not really. I did a whole video on problematic angles. Most of them came from BWL.
Some of them were pretty fun.
Yeah, but I mean, that's because we're 14-year-old kids and there's no social media, there's no YouTube. And we're like, hey, wouldn't it be funny if? And we would just try stuff and see what works. So let me ask you this: when you look back at PWL, what are some of the things you're most proud of from your time in PWL?
Oh man. Okay, so I have a lot of pride in recruiting Anthony. Because to this day I love to say things like, yeah, I'm a real good eye at recruiting talent. And Anthony was kind of like, not my first talent that I recruited, but like kind of like the big one because he brought in two more really talented guys and he stayed throughout the. He's like a foundational member of CCW. So that's one thing that I'm really proud about. The second thing I'm really proud about would have to be the writing, because like it was, it's important to get those early reps in. and getting that experience and the excitement of seeing ideas that I helped book or bring to life on camera. Even if they don't all hold up so well, like there are definitely some things that we tried. I'm glad we did try it. If I were to focus a little bit less on the production side and more on like in the ring experiences, I really like that angle that we did with the feud between me and Rottweiler. The way we brought Rottweiler in, like the way he banged up the U.S. title, that was really cool.
I remember like you were U.S. champion and the belt was just cardboard and tinfoil. And we were just like, we need to upgrade this man. And like, I remember I made a new U.S. title for you out of like a pie pan and a Halloween costume belt and some Sharpie. And it looked beautiful for one day. And then the Sharpie started to rub off and the pie pan started to get dented and the thing looked terrible. And I was like, all right, we got to write this out of the storyline. So we came up with Rottweiler stealing your U.S. title and smashing it up with a sledgehammer to further your feud. And then he beat you for the U.S. title, but we still hadn't figured out what the new belt was going to be. So he just had to carry around the broken one he smashed up, and he was so mad. He was so mad that he finally gets a belt. He's got to carry this janky broken one around. And I remember I got tired of hearing him complain about it, so I found like a hubcap in the street, and I just got like some house paint, and I just like finger painted U.S. title, and then put like a regular belt through it, and was like, here's your new U.S. title. Shut up.
Oh man. It's nice to have the belt hit tight. No, but okay, that, and I gotta say, like our wrestle stock mat, the barn burner that we had during the end of the invasion, that I am super proud of.
That's the only time we had a better match today. Yeah, only time that's ever happened.
Oh my gosh, definitely proud of that. That was awesome. I'm also proud of my work, like the creative work that went into like the Bone storyline. That was just comedy gold. Like,
yeah, no, I remember like we basically were just kind of making it up week by week as we came up with ideas. And I remember like it was during the SWL invasion, so we had separate locker rooms for PWL and SWL.
Yep.
And I guess in the storyline, only the SWL locker room had a phone. There wasn't a phone in the PWL locker room, so Bones would have to sneak into the SWL locker room to call his accomplice who was going to be debuting at WrestleStock. And I remember there was one time I was like, oh, would it be funny if you go to call him and you're doing the maniacal laughing like, oh, is Lucifer there? Oh, yeah, thank you. And you were just like, that's so silly. I don't know. And I was like, what? I live with my mom. And then B Money was like, yeah, I live with my mom. And like the entire roster was like, yeah, we all live with our moms. What's the problem?
Hello? Is Lucifer? Oh, thank you. Man, it's finally come! The day of reckoning! The day of hell splits open!
That's a good point. That's a good point. I at the time I was like, well, I wasn't sure what I guess I wasn't sure what direction we were taking this, because it was like, all right, if Bones is actually just a kid in a mask, that makes sense. But if he's actually supposed to be this demonic creature risen from hell, and his tag team partner is literally named Lucifer, like does the devil really live with his mom? Like, which now saying it out loud, yes, that is funny. The devil living with his mom is actually hilarious.
Yeah, we would just try stuff, and. I've said this before, but when I first started posting our backyard wrestling videos on YouTube, when YouTube first became a thing, one of the first comments I got was somebody going, boy, that's an awful lot of black people. And I'm just like, is it? Oh, I mean, I guess I never really noticed before, because it was that melting pot, like I don't like the expression, oh, I'm colorblind. But it's like, we didn't give a shit about any of that. Like,
no, we didn't.
We all came from different walks of life. We all had different hobbies, different interests, different backgrounds, but we all loved wrestling. And this one thing brought us all together from all these different walks of life. And I think that's awesome.
Oh, yeah. No, but, there's so much power in that. Like, being able to say that we had so many young people who were showing up for this, for this. Like, it's special. Like, and it's something that may never happen again in our lifetimes, right? Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't see a lot of backyard wrestling currently. At least nowhere near what it was when we were kids. And when we were kids, there's no YouTube, there's no social media. But it seemed like backyard wrestling had a bigger presence than it is now.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like it's, a relic from a bygone era. Kids now, they're just smartphones and social media. And nobody really plays outside anymore, let alone play fight with their friends on the weekend.
yeah, you know what? The cell phones have erased boredom. If you have nothing to do and everything is just, stripped down, right? Then you either come up with something really cool to do or you come up with something really terrible to do, right? Like, you say Idle Hands of the Devil's Playground. And what PWL is the result of boredom and people coming together to do something really awesome. And there's no more boredom.
And it's such a trip because now there's so many more resources available as far as like learning how to wrestle, being safe, how to take bumps, how to protect yourself, how to protect your opponent. Whereas with us, we had to figure it all out.
Yeah. Guesswork.
Yeah. And then even now, like, you can shoot a whole show on your cell phone in 4K, edit it in CapCut, add lower thirds and height packages and everything. Upload it to YouTube, make graphics in Canva, promote your shows on social media. It's so much easier now than it was when we were kids. And we just had a bunch of VHS camcorders that, shot super low res, standard definition, interlaced video, and nowhere to put it, nowhere to show anybody. Like, it's so different now. There's so many more resources available. Like, I'd like to see people start taking advantage of those. Yeah, PWL was silly and cheesy, and most of the guys were just there to have fun and didn't really care about having a good match or anything. But there's so many good things that came out of PWL. Mm-hmm. There were so many good matches that came out of PWL. So many good moments that came out of PWL. Like, I wouldn't trade that time for anything.
Same.
Like, I would certainly do certain things differently, and I probably wouldn't take myself as seriously, and I would probably, try and have a cooler head in certain moments. But for the most part, I mean, those were our fortifying years right there.
Oh yeah.
Those years set laid the groundwork for everything we would do afterwards. Shooting the shows, editing the shows, creating hype packages, building our website, making graphics, making t-shirts, like all that stuff. I taught myself how to do that because it's like, oh, we need a website. I better learn how to make websites. Oh, we need merch. I better learn how to make merch. Oh, we need this. We need that. Guess I better learn, and then that led me into doing video production and becoming a filmmaker. None of that happens without backyard wrestling. Now, let me ask you this. I don't know if we ever talked about this. Did you ever entertain the idea of going to wrestling school and trying to pursue this?
My crazy ass is over here talking about, like, oh, yeah, we'll just form our own league and call all the other backyard wrestlers and just have a separate circuit. That was my, that was my, you remember, I think years ago when we were kids, I tried to convince you of that. You were like, no, be irresponsible. We got to learn how everybody else does it. And then, I always had alternative ideas, I think, a lot of the time. But as far as like going to wrestling school and doing it for real, maybe when I was younger, like when I was a freshman, that was definitely something that was on my mind. Sophomore year, that was definitely something that was on my mind, But after PWL ended and there was that brief stretch of like, what are we going to do? I kind of let it go. This idea of going pro, What I had always really wanted to do in life was be a writer. And then I discovered, thanks to PWL, that being a performer is also awesome. And so my ability to tell stories and all of that, like if I were to get into pro wrestling, I would rather get in as like a booker or a writer. But actually going out there and taking the bumps and stuff, I'm not sure if that's exactly where my full potential lies. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But the thought had crossed my mind.
Okay. Okay. I was going to say PWL was a very transformative experience.
Yep.
we had to figure a lot of stuff out on our own. But even just like on an emotional journey, like there was a point in PWL where a switch kind of flipped with me, and I started focusing more on taking things serious, having better matches, you know, leading by example, pushing myself even further. And part of, I don't know if I ever told you this story, but back when we were in Kennedy, you know, we used to sell the PWL tapes to whoever would buy them. You know, this is before DVD was a thing. We're selling VHS tapes.
Yep.
And I remember I was in the gym, and you know, I'm not really a sports guy, so I was just kind of wandering around the gym while everybody, you know, plays whatever. And I was underneath one of the bleachers, and there was like VHS tape just like strewn out everywhere underneath one of the bleachers. And I follow this tape, and it leads to one of our PWL tapes that someone had smashed and ripped up. And so for me, that was a moment that like a switch flipped, and I was like, okay, our product sucks. I'm tired of this. I don't ever want to feel like this again. And so that's when I really started like taking things more seriously, trying to be a better wrestler, trying to put on better matches, focusing more on the product we're creating. And, oh, we're just here to just have fun. It's like, yeah, that's nice, but we can have fun and put on a good product at the same time. Because even if you look at like the later years of PWL, it looks very different than the early years of PWL.
Oh yeah, no, by far.
You know, and that's what did it for me. Is that's the moment where a switch flipped with me, and I started taking things way more seriously.
I had noticed that there was a change, and I supported that change for certain. I too wanted to have good matches.
Yeah.
I don't think we ever really went in with the intention of having bad matches.
Yeah.
But you know, the focus was sort of like it was a wake up call and recognizing that maybe we weren't living up to our full potential.
Yeah, exactly.
For certain. Now, you had never told me that story, and man, freshman year.
Yeah, so
That must have been the tail end of freshman year, huh?
It was.
Going into summer.
Yep.
Doing the calculus. That's heartbreaking.
And that's when I was like, all right, I got to take things seriously. And even when you look, there was the whole incident with the roster. I don't want to say roster split, but like there was that incident.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm sure I'll talk about this more with the people involved. But basically, from the way I remember it was Talon was having somebody going to come watch him wrestle. Mm-hmm. This person was like a mentor to him for this program he was in. And I remember everybody I tried to book with Talon, they were like, "Are you wrestling him?" And you could just see like the heartbreak on his face that nobody wanted to wrestle this guy. You know, and
I wasn't there that day, was I?
No, you were, because you were in the match. We had some like throwaway masked mid-carder match to open the show, and I don't know what set him off, but Poe came out and sucker punched Carlos, and then him and B Money got into a little standoff, and then
I was there, crap.
You know, and then
oh man,
yeah, and so Poe and Kid Crush and Talon, they left. And, you know, because that was a big deal.
I remember that happening.
You know, that was a big, because now, you know, when you're taking pot shots at people who are just there to have fun, that's not okay. You know, and again, I don't know what set him off. I'm pretty sure it's that whole Talon thing, you know, but.
Yeah, if memory serves.
Yeah, but I remember.
Nobody would wrestle.
But, you know, they were banned for a while, because we're like, no, this is supposed to be like, you know, I hate the term safe space, but it's supposed to be like a positive, like,
we're here to have fun. We're not here to get beat up.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, they were banned for a while. But with them gone, the focus then shifts to all these people who are just here to have fun. And so then the work rate just nosedives, and the product just nosedives, and the match quality nosedives. And it's just me and Nappy holding it down as the best wrestlers by default. You know, bless his heart. He was holding it down with me. We were doing our best to keep the damn ship above water.
Yeah, it was like you and Nappy, and then after that,
because we lost everyone better than us.
Yes,
so we were the best by default.
And if we were gonna rank it, it was you, Chris, you, Nappy, then like me and Rottweiler, and Daryl.
Yeah,
you know, and then like Brian, and then like everyone else.
But I remember going back to that story I told you about the VHS tape. One day, Poe and Ant and Talon came by my house. I hadn't seen them since the incident. We were talking. We were shooting shit. They were asking about maybe coming back. And I remember, like, as a boss, as a leader, sitting there thinking, like, well, I want our product to be good, and right now it's not. So I kind of had a choice to make. I can either side with the people who are just here to have fun, and then our product stays terrible forever, or I can side with these people who morally probably did what they shouldn't have done and acted out, but best wrestlers we fucking got. And so I kind of had this choice to make, and it was a very difficult choice for me to make. And I tried to just be objective and take my emotions out of it and just think as a leader and think, okay, what's best for the brand? What's best for the product? And so I chose to bring Poe and Anthony and Talon back, which then meant B-Money and Carlos and Rottweiler, and all those people were gone, because they couldn't coexist. And when you watch those early PWL shows, sometimes we'd have 10, 15, 20 people there.
Yeah.
And then after that, 7, if we're lucky.
Yeah.
But at the time, I remember thinking, this is the hardest choice I've had to make, but I got to act in what's in the best interest for the product. For us to put out the best show possible, I have to make this difficult choice. And I felt bad because it hurt my relationship with B-Money. And I really regret that. Like, I didn't... Obviously, he took it personal, but I didn't want it to be personal. I was trying to make a unbiased business decision, even though it's not a business. We're not making any money. None of us are getting paid.
Yeah.
So
and that's the thing I would say here is, like, if it was a business, if it was indeed a business, then you would have made the right decision. This is why psychopaths tend to run big industries, because it's all about the money and not about what's right?
Yeah.
But like, the thing is that was the one big thing. Like, that was the one, like, kind of, to me, the black eye on PWL in a way. Like, in the long term thinking of it all, like, we didn't know there was going to be a CCW.
Yeah.
We didn't know there was going to be.
And that's the thing with hindsight is if I don't make that choice, if I say no, that's not okay, and I side with B-Money and the people are just there to have fun, there is no CCW, there is no AWF, there is no RCW War.
Yeah.
I
honestly,
we don't do shows in front of crowds. I don't go to wrestling school. None of that stuff ever happened.
I think that either decision you made would have been a decent leadership decision. It's just, what kind of leader are you? Are you a leader that is trying to instill, give an ethical example? Mm-hmm. Or are you a leader that is trying to make a decision that is best for business? Now, granted, we weren't making any money. I want to stress that.
I know.
We were not making any money. Now, I would prefer to say that you made the best decision in terms of art, because wrestling is an art form. And if you want to make good matches, you have to have people that are either willing to improve.
Nappy and Kid Crush had that amazing 2 out of 3 falls match at the last show. So that match doesn't happen if I don't make that choice.
Right. So I will say you made the best artistic decision. I wouldn't say business decision, because we weren't making money.
I know.
But you made the best artistic decision. Now,
it was a lose-lose scenario. Yes. Whatever option I pick, somebody loses.
Yes. I mean, I think Poe and Anthony would have been all right. I don't think they would have lost nothing.
No, but the product would have suffered.
Yes.
And we probably wouldn't be sitting here today talking about our backyard wrestling careers 20 years later.
That's true.
Since it was my house and the buck stopped with me, I was always the one who had to make these difficult choices. I couldn't look to nobody else and be like, what should we do? Like, I can ask people for their opinions, but at the end of the day, it's up to me to decide what direction we go.
And that's true.
And if I put personal feelings in there, then I think things turn out very differently for everybody. And so I felt like what I needed to be as a leader was someone who was objective, who would look at the big picture, and who wouldn't make decisions based off of emotions or impulses.
But the thing about it is, at the PWL stage, like, I get later on, but the PWL stage, these are your friends.
I know.
You got to treat your friends right.
I know. I took it so seriously. I took it so seriously.
You don't do your friends like that. That's not what you do. But yes, from a bit. Now, if we were making money, yes.
You're talking to the guy who sat down at his computer and typed up super illegal contracts and tried to get minors to sign them.
Good point.
So I took it way too seriously.
That's a good point. I just, when it comes to your friends, you got to treat your friends right. And like, it's different. It's different when, like, y'all are, when if we were pulling in money, like if there was actually money flowing in, Oh, absolutely. Make that decision, because at the end of the day, it becomes about the money or the art in this case. And I guess, but I look, can we at least agree that it was more for the art than for the business? 'Cause we didn't make any goddamn
We didn't make any money.
It was for the art.
Yeah.
We wanted to make better art. And that I'm for.
Yeah.
And, it's like if you're, and that's the one thing I will say about you, my friend, is that you would be willing to do whatever it takes to make the best art. And that's a quality.
That's right.
That is a quality. And it's a hard thing. It's not one of those things where, was Poe interested in apologizing to Carlos at all?
I don't remember. I don't remember at all. I would like to think so. Like, in hindsight, if I were in that situation today, the way I would handle it is when they first talked about coming back, my first thing would be like, well, you're going to have to make amends. You're going to have to, fix this bridge. Like, I can't condone that kind of behavior, so you're going to need to apologize.
Yeah. Like, my thing would have been like, don't talk to me, talk to Carlos. Talk to the person.
And then I would have talked to B-Money and been like, hey, they're interested in coming back. I told them if they want to come back, they need to make amends and they need to apologize. What are your thoughts? And I would try to have been more diplomatic. But that's a perspective that comes with maturity and with age and with wisdom and with making a lot of wrong decisions.
Yeah.
And
that's definitely, I think, the best decision that could have been. But like you said, age and experience.
Yeah. So now let me ask you this. We're 22 years away from the end of PWL. What do you think PWL's legacy is?
I think PWL's legacy is this amazing story about having young people from all over, from different socioeconomical strata, coming together to make something that is at times funny, at times quirky, at times sweet, and at times almost kind of beautiful. And setting aside whatever it is that they've got going on, I think we were a refuge for a lot of kids too. Maybe their home life wasn't all that positive, maybe it was abusive, but we gave them a place where they could just be. And that is something that, you can't quantify how awesome that is. You can't really sum that up with a price tag. That's priceless. That's the legacy of PWL. Whenever former PWL guys are, in the middle of raising their kids or going to see their kids' sports, that's the legacy. And it's a beautiful one.